Hey, Jeff, can you give me a ride to Joanne Fabrics?
Ah, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
All right, Jeff, that has nothing to do with Ahsoka or this cold open.
It's working! It's working!
I got a bad feeling about this.
Welcome in to the Bro Force Squad podcast, where we are just a bunch of bros drinking beer and talking TV and movies. This is our review of Ahsoka Season 1, Episode 4, titled Fallen Jedi. I am your host, the Mayor Jeff Hornacek, joined as always by the mad scientist Brian Banner to review this as we do all of our television episodes using the four Bro Force Squad criteria, which is the acting, the story, our favorite scene, and then our theories and questions going forward. All right, Brian, this is the halfway point of Season 1 of Ahsoka. What did you think of the acting and cast in this episode?
There wasn't a ton of acting. This was an action-packed episode, but I will say Ray Stevenson as Balin is just doing everything for me right now. It's a shame of his untimely passing earlier this year, but
I know I wish he could have been around to see the praise that he's getting for this.
Yeah, he is just absolutely a scene stealer to me. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but the scene with him and Ahsoka where they're kind of sizing each other up, and even earlier in the episode when he references Ahsoka and kind of is like, yeah, this isn't going to be as easy as you think it's going to be. Like, I know who we're dealing with here. He's just, you could tell he has this power and he's seeking more, but there's still something that's holding him back, and he's still a little scared, a little bit. I love how he's playing him. I think he's doing a great job.
Yeah, there's all these like subtle layers to his character that I can't quite figure out. I don't know if he's one step ahead of everyone else, and he knows that that's his advantage, or if he's scared shitless of what's going to happen when Thrawn shows up, and as a result, he's like kind of has his tail tucked between his legs the whole time. And I kind of like that I can't tell.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both at times, I feel like.
In this episode, you hit the nail on the head. It's really advances the story quite a bit, but in a weird way, there's like not a lot of performative work going on with these actors. I will say this was my one big fear in this cast at the beginning of the season, and unfortunately, I think we were both right because I heard you say it in last week's review with Nate Thurmond. But Natasha Liu Bordizzo, who's playing Sabine, is just not doing it for me, man. She's overselling a lot of her emotional stuff. Now, granted, she's been given the most emotional weight so far with Sabine. Like, there's a lot of shit going on with her character, like we said in our first two episodes review, but it just kind of seems like she's trying a little too hard, especially with the facial emotion. Like, relax a little bit. But I mean, physically, she's great. She's doing all the physicality stuff right. But poor her being matched up in scenes with Rosario Dawson every time because she's just having a clinic put on.
I know, and yeah, she's been dealt a rough hand. She's trying too much. I mean, the thing is when you're working with somebody like Rosario Dawson, you can't try and be as good as them. You just have to feed off of them. And it's more like a competition as opposed to a collaboration when they have scenes together is what it feels like.
I will say one thing I do like about her portrayal of Sabine, and I didn't watch Rebels like you did, so I don't exactly have anything to base this off of, but it would be really easy, excuse me, to play her character as kind of like a whiny bitch, like complaining all the time. And she has been able to avoid that based on like her previous baggage with Ahsoka and how she sort of feels like she was given the shaft last time she was trained. She has not come across as like nagging, which I do appreciate.
Yeah, I think, I mean, as far as the character's written and everything, it's pretty true to who Sabine is in Rebels. I just think the portrayal is lacking a little bit. But again, when you're every scene is just every other actor is just doing an amazing job and you're the weakest link, that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. You're just the worst of a lot of really good people. I mean, she's not doing a good job, but I, I was trying to
I've
buck her up
definitely
there.
seen worse acting in big budget shows and movies.
I've seen worse acting in Star Wars.
I have no idea what you're talking about. It's what's known for its great performances. Anything else? You want to move on to story?
Let's do story.
All right. According to IMDb, our plot synopsis. This actually, it's just like it's a weird way to describe what happens. It says Hera risks her career to help her friends, while Ahsoka and Sabine confront enemies. Yes, that is true. That happens in the episode, but I would in no way say, "Hey, lead off the episode description of episode 4 with talking about Hera's arc." Because
No.
she's kind of like an afterthought in this. She does cool shit, but like we open on, I don't know the name of the planet, but with Sabine and Ahsoka, and that's the primary story in this episode. It's where that Hera leads it off in IMDb.
I mean, Hera had what? 4 minutes of screen time at most.
Yeah, I mean it was like important stuff, but yeah, she was basically like in the background.
What'd you think?
So this, I think, it's been impressive with the short runtime so far in this series. How they've been able to move the plot along so quickly, because here I feel like we went from 6 to midnight pretty fast at the end. Like we are now, the plot device is no longer just being talked about. It is front and center and driving the narrative and the story here. I still don't really know what the fuck's going on. I think we're going to get in that here in just a second with theories and questions. But I know that I'm very interested, and I know that I have a lot of questions, but I'm not at the point yet, I've said this before, of being annoyed. So I don't really know what to make of the story here. This feels like a very important connective tissue episode, but I really think the real question for that will be answered probably the second we come back next week for Ahsoka. How about you?
Yeah, I said it earlier. Not a ton happened in this episode, really. Very action packed. Essentially, we had a race to see if Ahsoka and Sabine can stop the map from downloading first, right? That's all the episode was. Now, that's an oversimplification of it. There's a ton more going on. And like you said, I don't know that it'll be paid off or we'll really appreciate what this episode has done until later on. But we do know that how is anybody going to help Sabine and Ahsoka with the map being destroyed, right? I think that's one big thing to take out of this is that there's no help coming.
Right.
Which I thought was really interesting because we've really invested quite a bit into Hera, I feel like, for them to not have a way to connect with them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly like what I should know about her character from Rebels, and I hope that the show doesn't depend on that for us to care about her. I just know that clearly it's very high stakes, whatever Ahsoka and Sabine were involved in, to the point that she's jeopardizing what seems like a very long and illustrious career to go to this planet and see about the map. So that in alone, I think, has done a good job of conveying the stakes to me, at least.
Yeah, I agree. Got left on a really cool cliffhanger, I think, which we'll go. I would only assume in depth in theories and questions, but another good way to just keep me wanting to come back, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if that end scene doesn't have you like jacked up for next week, you don't have a pulse, or just why are you watching a Star Wars show?
Yeah, just leave now.
All right, you ready to move on to best scene?
Let's do it.
So this one, I mean, again, I hate to say this with such a short episode, but it almost kind of feels like one long scene on the planet.
I was thinking the same thing when I was, trying to figure out what I was going to talk about here. I had it was really hard to distinguish one from another because it's very, very continuous, not a lot of cuts.
I just wrote as far as like a starting point, because it is kind of one, it's not a set piece the way that it's connected, but like a prolonged action sequence. I just put the Real Steel rematch between Hu Yang and whoever that other droid is that came up and just like the droid just fucking sucker punched him, right? He was like fixing the ship. That was a horse shit move, I got to say.
That's just a dick move, Stan.
But I thought that whole scene, I love the look of the planet, how dimly lit it is. I love that whole fucking like forest action set piece, good lightsaber battles. Having like two lightsaber battles happening next to each other, I thought is a really cool idea. I don't know if you've ever seen anything specifically like that in Star Wars, at least that
I
I
don't
can.
think we have either. Maybe the closest thing, it's not even a lightsaber fight because I was thinking Attack of the Clones in the Coliseum, but that's just blasters and lightsabers, not really a dual lightsaber fight with one in the foreground and one in the background. Really creative shot, and like you said, with those dim and dull colors, it really made the lightsabers pop,
Oh yeah, yeah.
which
I
was
think that
awesome.
that's the aesthetic that I think it was kind of mirroring was. Is it at the end of Force Awakens when they're on the snow planet and it's Finn versus Kylo and it's like basically
Yeah,
nighttime? And the only way you
yeah,
can it's illuminated is through their sabers, which is really cool.
yeah. And I'm kind of just continuing on that, and that's when, more specifically, the lightsaber fight between Balin and Ahsoka. Um, the dialogue there, you feel the stakes. You can tell these are two foes that are equally matched to an extent. Lot of tension. I loved everything about that. It was great.
Did you get the feeling too? And maybe this is just because the Duel of the Fates fight in Phantom Menace is like one of the best choreographed fight scenes in any genre film, I'll say.
You mean
But
it is the best choreographed?
probably. But when I was watching Balin and Ahsoka fight, I get the feeling, and time wise, it wouldn't make sense because Ahsoka's older than we think at this point, right? Like we grew up with her in Clone Wars, but that was a long time ago in the Star Wars universe. You know, like probably 35 plus years, right?
I
So,
mean, yeah, I think you have to. You're thinking we'll say she was 14 when she started in Clone Wars. Clone Wars runs for roughly 8 years. Then you've got 20 years, more or less, of the Empire, 10
mhm.
years of the fall of the Empire. So, yeah, I mean, she's probably in her early 40s.
And I definitely get the feeling when her and Balin are fighting that they're like a little bit past their prime. It wasn't as bad as like Obi-Wan and Vader in A New Hope past their prime, where it's like, guys, let's put
Time
down
to
the
hang them up.
lightsabers and play dominoes against each other so no one has a heart attack. But for me, that kind of raises the stakes more because it definitely feels like they are not fighting out of like it is the last resort. They have to do this. Like, and
Yes.
it's clearly not like the thing that they know is most prudent for their health.
And neither one of them just like ran in to attack the other one. It was very calculated, um, and thoughtful, kind of one of those. I don't want to say a slow lightsaber fight because it wasn't. There's obviously some great action. You got some really cool flips out of Ahsoka running up on the
Yeah.
little rocks and shit, which was very Ahsoka like. So it's cool that we're seeing the cartoon Ahsoka come to fruition and still do those same moves in the live action.
Well, I have to say I mean, Filoni being involved is obviously a huge reason why, but they've done an awesome job of even mirroring like the minutia, the minor details of like the way that she even holds and like flails her sabers.
Yeah. And that's another big thing. I don't know if you noticed, she only used one lightsaber as opposed to two, and she
Mhm.
didn't use the reverse grip. She used like the traditional up and down grip, which was very interesting. I don't know if that was just because of that, the circumstances dictated that, or if that's going to come into play for something later on.
Yeah, you mentioning how she's gripping her lightsaber to me feels like a good time to just let our audience know that we have both seen a real woman naked, like in the flesh.
Once.
So even though we know how Ahsoka grips her lightsaber, like we've actually felt the touch of a woman. It was years ago and we paid for it to happen, but it did happen.
It was a Groupon.
I mean, losing money if you don't buy it. Speaking of that Ahsoka fight with Balin, that ties right into one of my theories and questions, but only if you're
Let's
ready
move
to
right
move on
in.
from.
Nope, let's do
Okay.
it.
Um, a theory I have, don't even know if this is far fetched being talked about or even of significance, but Ahsoka threw that fight against Balin. I just
Ooh.
don't know. I don't know why.
I don't hate it.
Is it like an Obi-Wan Luke situation? She basically died sort of in front of Sabine and sort of knows about this place, which I want you to talk about here in a second, where she can commune with possibly Anakin or other Jedi.
I don't I don't disagree with her throwing the fight. I think she has a much better fighter than what she indicated in that fight. But for her to get to the world between worlds, which is where she is when we see Anakin at the end of the episode, you have to have a portal. There has to be an entrance there. And I don't know how she would have known that there was an entrance, let alone be able to get into it. The world between worlds, there's a whole lot going on there. There's some pretty good YouTube videos out on it if you guys look that up, that kind of explains what it is. But it's kind of the pathway between all time, right? But you can only access the events that you were involved in or that you have a connection to. And you can't change anything, because if you change something, you essentially aren't going to exist. And we have a Back to the Future situation where you disappear. So it's a very complicated place. I'm very interested to see how they're going to explain it to the people who haven't seen Rebels and aren't balls deep in the animated series, where it's fleshed out several times.
So you can fuck a lot of things up then from that place.
Yes. And that there's a really fun episode where Ahsoka and Ezra in the world between worlds, and Emperor Palpatine is trying to get there, but he has to be brought there by Ezra. And so it's a whole battle there. Really cool visually. I suggest watching that. I believe it's in the last season, if I'm not mistaken.
Interesting. Do you have anything else related to that place specifically, a theory?
Yeah, I think that is how Ahsoka is going to reunite with Sabine, wherever Thrawn and Ezra are. Obviously, we know Sabine is going to get there via the ship that she's on with Balin and Morgan Elsbeth, but I believe Ahsoka is going to use the world between worlds to show up wherever we're going, wherever our destination is. And that's how she's going to get there, and we're going to have this epic fight.
So my question then, the line that Anakin says to Ahsoka, and I'm paraphrasing, is, "Hey, Snips, didn't expect to see you here so soon." To me, that implies that she is dead and he was expecting her to live a much longer life. Is that a incorrect interpretation, or is he just maybe not aware of like how she got there?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that, because it felt the way that it seemed, and the way that I interpreted it was exact as you, like, oh shit, she is dead, but she's at this world between worlds, and I don't think that's where you would go when you die. So,
but Anakin's there, and I mean, now we're gonna say he's not dead? Like, come on.
Yeah. So again, I don't know. So I just assumed that, I also went off of the assumption that she can't be dead, because we have 4 more episodes in the show.
Right, because you're not going to kill Ahsoka in episode 4 of Ahsoka.
Exactly. So I don't know how that's going to work. I'm thinking that she somehow went through a portal, to get to the space between worlds, and they're trying to throw us off, and that is actually a Force ghost of Anakin.
Okay. Well, I guess at this point, I'm very interested. I don't know enough about that thing to.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very wild guess. I have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question. I think you answered this for me off pod earlier, but what the fuck happened to Morak? Because when he gets sliced and diced, it looks like Thanos snapped him away in Infinity War. Like, how am I supposed to interpret that death?
So, Morgan Elsbeth is a Night Sister, right? She has
Correct.
witchcraft. One of the abilities that they can do is they can bring spirits back from the dead and essentially fight for them. So, essentially, what that I'm assuming, it was an Inquisitor that she has some sort of connection to, and she kept that spirit alive as a henchman. Mm-hmm. And so when Ahsoka killed it, she killed that spirit, or sent that spirit back to wherever the spirits in Star Wars go. And that was that. Now, piggybacking off of that, if I remember correctly, in our first review, you had a theory, and I think this was another one that was going around the internet too, of Morak was Ezra, correct?
Yeah, that was my theory. Yes.
I don't think that that's completely dead yet to an extent. I don't see why Ezra can't be dead, but that was Ezra's spirit that Morgan Elsbeth has raised back from the depths.
Whoa. Okay.
Again, reaching out on a limb there, but that's what we do here on the Bro Force Squad. We swing for the fences.
I like it. Go big or go home. All right, what else you got?
I have a couple of questions and a couple more theories. So let me throw this one out there. Has zero significance on anything else other than maybe set up another show and or season. I think we'll see either Ezra and or Ahsoka train Jason Syndulla to be a Jedi, because that's the only logical reason that Hera would bring him into a war zone and chase after these big baddies.
Yeah, I mean that if she couldn't find a sitter.
I mean, come on. It's 2023. Yeah. We've got the internet.
Do you trust someone from the internet?
Well,
for the right price, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kid has definitely a big role to play, but like you said, it might not necessarily be in this series, but somewhere down the line.
I think they're planting a hard seed for something with that. Like, all right, we're going to put it here, and then if we want to, we can pull on that string. If not, people are just going to be like, all right, cool. I guess she just was a bad parent.
Could be both, though.
Could be both. All right. Quick question for you. Do you know the significance of the call sign Fulcrum?
No, I just know it's obviously like a joint is what it means.
So Fulcrum was Ahsoka's call sign when they were forming the Rebel Alliance back in Rebels. She is the one that went to all the Rebel cells and was connecting them all together. And her secret identity, nobody knew who she was other than Balin Organa, or excuse me, Senator Organa, knew that was her name. And then some other spies at times took up that name, but she is the focal point of all of the factions forming the Rebel Alliance.
That is really cool. And that's a cool call sign.
So it was a really cool call sign, cool callback to Rebels. But I was curious if you knew anything about that.
No, I didn't, but that's a really cool Easter egg. And was that because that used to be her ship, or was that Hera trying to contact her on the planet?
No, Fulcrum is her ship now. Like, that's her call sign. So when they call for Fulcrum, they're calling for Ahsoka. Just like when they call for Ghost, they're calling for Hera's ship. Phoenix Squadron, things like that. Red One, Rogue One.
Nice.
Omaha.
Red 7.
What do you got? You got anything else?
Yeah, so I had a quick question about Balin, and this is more like a timeline thing, but the way, and I told you this off pod, the way he speaks to Ahsoka, he clearly has like insider knowledge or relationships in the Jedi Order, and specifically has some knowledge about Anakin. So I was wondering, is he a contemporary of Anakin? Like, can we safely assume he was like maybe roughly Anakin's age when Anakin was in the Order with him? Or was he someone's Padawan maybe in the Order around that time, like another young Jedi, like cutting his teeth, who was like rivals with Anakin? And maybe he was like, who's the fucking dude with like the wrinkly head? Looks like a cone head, who's on the council.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
But like maybe he was like that guy's Padawan or something, and he was like well aware of all the drama that went down. You know, I just think he has an interesting backstory that I hope we get. I hope his backstory isn't one of the things that like has to take a back seat in this story because we run out of time, you know?
Yeah, I think he was around Anakin's age, maybe slightly older. I also think he left the Jedi Order before Order 66. I don't think he was a survivor of Order 66. I think he was a deserter of the Jedi Order. He still has Clone War armor on, which looks fucking badass, by the way.
Throwbacks.
Yeah, so I really hope they flesh out a little bit more. We get some more of his background. because that's a really interesting character. Again, the way that Ray Stevenson is playing it, I'm all in. I want to know more about that. Give me 2.5 episodes of his story.
I know, dude. It would be so sick if we got like if obviously he's passed away, unfortunately, the late Ray Stevenson. But imagine like an anthology movie on Balin. That'd be badass.
Oh, that'd be sick.
All about that. I had one more thing. No, it's not a big thing.
All right. I've got one thing that I want to happen, and then I have a yes or no question for you.
Okay. Are either of those cool? Because mine's not really cool.
One of them might be cool.
Okay, let's do that one last.
Okay.
I'll just ask my question. And this may be a really simple answer of something I'm missing, but why did the map that the Night Sister had, why did that burn Ahsoka when she grabbed it? Was that like some spell she cast on it?
Or was there some idea? I was curious about that too.
Because
like, was it just hot because it was like projecting everything for so long? Right. You know, like when your computer gets hot when you're downloading a bunch of stuff.
Nickelback songs. But also there's a lot of MCU like visual inspirations in this.
Iron Man's lab.
Well, it kind of felt like in Infinity War when Ebony Maw tries to grab the time stone from Doctor Strange, and he has the spell on it that burns his hand.
Yeah.
Sort of getting vibes from that. But again, I didn't know if it meant anything, because I felt like they kind of lingered on the idea that it burnt her, you know, and like there was something more going on than could meet the eye. But I didn't know if it was just the Night Sister who put like a spell on it. To where
it very well could have been that easy. I don't know.
Okay. I figured it was something simpler. I just didn't know if you were aware of any connection in Rebels or anything else in the Star Wars lore.
Yeah, not that I'm familiar with at this point.
Okay. That's all I had.
All right. I'll give you my question and then one thing that I want to happen. Do you think by the end of this season of Ahsoka, we will see the Rebels, quote unquote, from Rebels all together reunite? That's Zeb, Chopper, Hera, Ezra, Sabine, Ahsoka, and then you would obviously have Jason replacing Kanan.
All right. Chopper, having not seen Rebels, I know most of these names. Chopper and Hera are already there. Like Chopper's on the ship, right?
Yes. Chopper, Hera, and Jason are on the ship now. Ahsoka and Sabine are in their respective places.
Zeb is the only one. Mandalorian last season.
Yes.
Wasn't he in the bar?
He was in Mandalorian. He was in the bar, and he was talking to Carson,
who's the X-wing pilot.
Who's the X-wing pilot that was with Hera.
Was Carson one of the X-wing pilots who died when the hyperdrive
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it was the alien and the chick died.
Then I have to think yes then, right? I mean, that could be like the last shot of the season.
Maybe. I mean, I feel like it has to as well because we saw him in Mando. It seems like a really expensive 30-second cameo just to bring him in, where instead you can spread the development money across two shows and get more out of it.
And him,
I just don't see at this point how they're going to bring Zeb in or how Zeb is going to get there.
Yeah, that's the only problem. But we have 4 episodes to figure that out.
That's true. We'll worry about that when we cross that bridge.
I think if you were betting in Vegas, I think that would be a good value pick right there. To say they all get together.
Yeah. All right. Last thing I want in this next episode, and I think there's a good chance we're going to get this, but I would love a super character-driven scene where Ahsoka and Anakin are hashing out her guilt for leaving him and not finishing her training, and how she feels that if she would have stayed with Anakin, maybe he wouldn't have turned to the dark side, and how he felt betrayed, and if that pushed him to the dark side at all. Something that's going to kind of flesh out their grievances, because they've never really got to hash that out.
Oh, yeah, that's like a need. I mean, especially after all the action we had in this episode, I could use like 18 solid minutes of like spliced
slow down a little bit. Slow down a little bit.
Dialogue, yeah. Exactly. And I think that's necessary. Also, I told you this off pod too. To get Hayden Christensen back in this role, we didn't really utilize him much in Obi-Wan. I mean, you don't bring him in to talk to Ahsoka if you're not planning on actually like doing something with that. So I hope that they take full advantage of it.
Yes, I agree. I think they've also subtly been explaining how Ahsoka is troubled by the fact that she didn't finish her training, or that Anakin didn't get to finish her training, and how she's walked out now on Sabine as well. And it feels like she carries a lot of guilt for all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And is that what is going to catapult her to be a better master to Sabine, to make Sabine successful, whether she can use the Force or not? Because that's a whole nother fucking conversation I don't want to have right now.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with that. And it sort of just feels like I feel like Sabine's character arc right now is like the least of anyone's worries with this show, unfortunately.
Yeah, but yet that's the one that I feel like they're leaning into the most.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess we'll know a lot more when we see what this place between worlds is, because maybe Ezra Bridger is there also, and that will lead.
And that's a great possibility, because we know he's been there before.
Yeah.
So
it'll get interesting. As Yogi Berra says in one of his quotes, "It's getting late early." Kind of how I feel about this show. We're halfway through, but it feels like we're like fucking in it right now, you know?
Yeah. Still digging it. It's great. Ahsoka's my favorite character.
Yeah, it's been awesome to see her fleshed out in live action and portrayed by the excellent Rosario Dawson. All right, Brian, before we let the people go, any last thoughts on Ahsoka Season 1, Episode 4?
Yeah, Rosario Dawson's doing a lot better than she did with Nurse Claire.
What was wrong with her Nurse Claire?
She just sucked in every fucking thing.
I don't know if it was her. Iron Fist was trash anyway, so you can't blame that on her.
That's true.
Her and Colleen Wing were actually like the one thing that kind of worked.
Love me some Colleen Wing.
Yeah, same. All right, for the mad scientist, Brian Banner, I'm the Mayor, Jeff Hornacek. We are the Bro4 Squad podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening to us. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, pretty much anywhere you find audio podcasts. If you type in Bro Force Squad as 3 separate words. We're on Twitter or X. We're also on Instagram at Bro4 Squad. We don't use it too much, but if you want to contact us there, you can. But the real place to find everything we've ever posted, and another way to contact us, is on our website, bro4squad.com. Till next time, Banner and I are going to go take a nap in space between spaces.
World between worlds, okay?
It looked like you would sleep like a baby there, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. Little white noise in the background.
That's what that was.